And so I'm going to say this about inconclusive results, ladies and gentlemen. When an examiner comes back and says inconclusive, you still sat in that chair knowing whether you lied or whether you told the truth. That examiner was unable to determine, based on the reactions and based on the questions they formulated. So it's not your fault, it's the examiner's fault. Welcome to Inside the Polygraph. I'm your host, David Goldberg, expert polygraph examiner. Join me as I and my guests break down the facts, fictions of polygraph testing, law enforcement, and so much more. Real cases, real conversations. The truth is always revealed inside the polygraph. Welcome back. Let's talk about what happens when you arrive for your polygraph examination. You're going to approach the facility where you're going to take the polygraph examination. And when you arrive at that location, you're going to be greeted by the examiner. The examiner is going to take you into a room, and in that room, it depends on the agency and it depends on the department. One of two things are going to happen. One, you're either going to have a packet that you have brought with you. It's called a pre-employment questionnaire packet that you've already filled out, or you're going to fill one out while you're there. If you've already filled one out, several things could happen. Either the agency could have already emailed it or sent it to the examiner for the examiner to review it, or you could have it in a sealed envelope to hand to the examiner, or you're going to fill one out right there. And filling one of those out does take a while. It takes maybe 45 minutes, okay, or up to 45 minutes. Could take, maybe less, depends. And it's an extensive packet. And I have one here, and I'll read some of the questions off in a minute. But you're going to answer it, and you're going to answer them, and it's a check mark, yes or no. And some of them have places where you have to fill out detailed answers. After you either hand that packet to the examiner or you fill it out, that examiner is going to review that packet with you and is going to clarify verbally whether those answers are accurate, whether they're correct, and whether you have missed anything, and whether or not you have forgotten anything or you need to add anything. After that, ladies and gentlemen, you may be brought from one room to what's called the polygraph examination room, and there you're going to be then tested and verified based on that packet that you filled out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a packet, a pre-employment polygraph questionnaire packet. It is about, and this is a packet that it's 16 pages. Some might be 25 pages, some might be 30, some might be even up to 50 pages long. This one in particular is 16 pages. And it goes very extensive, okay? And it asks everything from your basic name, date of birth. Some will ask for your social security number, some won't. Will ask for your current residence, and whether or not you have any kind of different name, or have you ever changed your name. It'll ask for your college and educational background and so on. And these are some of the questions that will be asked in this packet that will be asked of you, such as, have you ever received any formal disciplinary actions? Have you ever accepted a bribe? Did you knowingly violate any criminal laws? Have you ever falsified any official reports? Have you ever been fired or dismissed from a job for any reason? Have you ever intentionally abused or harassed or berated another person, either outside of employment or at employment. Have you ever consumed alcoholic beverages or any illegal substances while on the job? Have you ever been involved in any type of vehicle accident involving alcohol? Have you ever been involved in a hit and run? Have your license ever been suspended or revoked? And so on and so on and so on. And there's many, 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 many questions. I could be here all day and I'm not going to. But those are the kind of questions that would be on a typical questionnaire, pre-employment questionnaire form. That's what would be on your pre-employment polygraph examination packet. Then the examiner will then review it with you. But here's what's going to happen majority of the time, ladies and gentlemen. And this is what's real important. If you do not sign it, and a lot of people fail to sign it and date it, and it's not the examiner's responsibility to tell you to sign it and date it, it becomes invalid, and that's part of a dismissal sometimes from your polygraph examination. So that slight not signing and dating your packet could disqualify you. So you make sure you sign and date that packet. Once you sign and date that packet, you are affirming that everything on there is answered accordingly and to your best of your knowledge. Then what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, that examiner is going to go over there with you every answer that you've given. And an examiner might typically say, I see that you answered yes to having a dispute with another coworker. Can you explain? And you might explain it to the examiner. And the examiner is going to take some notes and then say, when you were, and I'll just say hypothetically, when you were working at that gas station, other than having a disagreement with a coworker, was there any other employments that you had a disagreement with any other coworkers? And you would say no, hypothetically. And so then they would move on to the next phase of the questionnaire. Then, like I said, they're going to bring you into the examination room, and now they're going to test you. What they do, ladies and gentlemen, is they're going to review the questions with you so that you know there's not going to be any surprise questions. You're going to know every single question that's going to ask you on that test. And then they're going to test you. And after they give you the number of tests that they're going to give you, the examiner will do one of two things. One, if it's their policy, they may tell you right then and there that you passed or failed. Or they may tell you that they can't tell you the results. They have to send it to a quality control examiner, and then you'll be notified at a later time. Then you'll be notified via either email, letter, or phone call that you've either passed or you failed. Here's what happens, ladies and gentlemen, and why I get called by a lot of individuals or emailed by a lot of individuals in reference to pre-employment polygraph tests. When they absolutely feel that they passed and then they were told that they failed. And you want to know why they failed. Here are the reasons why individuals fail pre-employment polygraph tests when they know they were absolutely 110% open and honest. Number one, it goes back to inexperience of the examiner. That's number one. Number two, it can be in reference to sometimes the questions that were asked of you. And I'm going to say this in reference to the results. There is a big difference in reference to how these pre-employment polygraph tests are given. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Every individual is different. That's why you're called an individual, correct? We're not all made the same. They don't all look alike unless you're a twin. We're all different. And so why should we, when we apply, why should we be all clumped in together for the same kind of examination in a pre-employment polygraph test? It's like putting a dice in a cup and shaking it and rolling it and hoping we're going to get a 6 every time we roll it. It doesn't work that way, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't. However, these pre-employment polygraph tests are supposed to be saying, well, we're going to test you the same way for fairness, and hopefully everyone's going to come out the identical same way. And if you fail, sorry, next time, good luck. When in fact you sit back and you go, what the F? I know I told the truth. So there's a difference between what I do sometimes, and when I say sometimes, depending on the agency, that gives you the leeway, is this. Each individual is very different. And I don't clump them together like all. And a perfect example is, and this is what a pre-employment polygraph test question would be like. And I'm going to read it to you. This is what I don't do, ladies and gentlemen. And this is what I'm allowed to do with certain agencies. And this is why I get hired. Whereas other agencies do the same thing over and over and over again. And this is what you have seen, and I know you have seen it on the news, and you've read about it. Police officer charged with indecent liberties with a minor. Matter of fact, ladies and gentlemen, just recently in my own area, matter of fact, last night, a police officer was charged with indecent liberties of a minor. You also hear police officer charged with rape. Corrections officer charged with sexual assault. On and on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I'm going to tell you why that occurs. You want to know why it occurs, ladies and gentlemen? It's because of the questions that are asked on the polygraph that clumps them all in the same kind of category, and they slip through because they're not questioned as individuals. And when I test as individuals. And I can promise you, guarantee that every applicant, candidate I've ever tested has not been ever charged, arrested, or convicted of any kind of criminal act on a minor, on an adult, or anything because of my extensive in-depth polygraph testing. And how does this happen? It happens because of, like I said, it's just like background checks. They slip through the cracks because if you've got a squeaky clean background check, they're clean as a whistle. However, polygraph tests, if you clump them all together, and I'm going to show you the questions that clump everyone all at once, that doesn't define an individuality, they can slip. Here you go. When you take a polygraph test, ladies and gentlemen, in pre-employment, they're going to ask some questions such as this. Have you ever used drugs illegally? Have you ever been involved with illegal drugs? So here's a perfect example with me, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll say this. I have never in my entire life ever used any illicit drugs. That does not make me better than who's listening and who's watching this podcast, because I'm not better than anyone. It just means that I was raised never to do it because my father would have torn me up. And it was just the way I was raised. So I never did it. Not to say that I was never around it growing up, I just never did it. However, when I applied to my careers, I had to take polygraph examinations. And you know what my biggest fear was? The fear did come to fruition. My fear was that this polygraph examiner that I was going to go see was not going to believe that I never did any illegal drugs. So I felt that, oh my God, this examiner is going to think I'm a liar. I'm going to fail my polygraph test, all because he's not going to believe me. Sure enough, I didn't fail my polygraph test, but sure enough, that examiner got in my ass because he didn't believe what I was telling him. And of course, again, I took the test in the way back, not now, so many years ago. So he's going, come on, you're going to tell me that you've never taken a hit. You never went to a high school party where the joint was being passed around. And, I said, no, never. And so he's already had this thought in his head that, I was full of crap and that, here I am. And I was thinking, oh my God, my heart's beating out of my chest. I'm getting ready to, fail this because he doesn't believe me. But I did pass. And what I'm trying to get at is because of this question, have you ever used any illegal drugs? And I said no. He didn't believe me. And that clumps it all in. So that's a good question. Have you ever used it? Which I know I passed. But have you ever been involved with any illegal drugs? Let's hypothetically say you've never been involved. Involved could be what, ladies and gentlemen? What does involved mean? Can mean what? Selling, using, ingesting, transporting, can mean all that, right? Exactly. But that word involved, to me, when you're sitting there and you're being tested and you're going, well, I know I've never used it. I know I never smoked it. I never ate any edibles, but I remember being with someone, but he never told me what he did. I don't know if that, and then all of a sudden you show a reaction on that test and you happen to show a reaction and you fail. Here's the difference what I do. When I interview intently. And what's going to happen is, let's hypothetically say you tell me, you know what, I was with someone when I was in high school or when I was 25 or whatever, and I was with someone, said he has to, go somewhere or drop off something. I didn't know what he was doing. We were driving. All of a sudden, he got stopped by the police. I was let go. I still don't know what he did, but I only assume. When I test him, I'm going to ask him specifically, beside that one time that you were stopped with your friend, had you ever been involved with any illegal drugs or narcotics? If he hasn't, or she hasn't, she's going to pass that test with flying colors. And then I know definitively that individual that I just tested, individualized, is going to pass that test question. And I have now cleared that individual because that person is not clumped together like everyone else. There is a big difference, ladies and gentlemen, in testing and with experience in examiners. So when it comes to these individuals that get arrested for indecent liberties, with sexual abuse, sexual assaults, rapes, all that stuff, it's because, now, it doesn't mean that they were committing the crimes immediately after graduating the academy or whatever. It could have been many, many years later. Or they could have done it prior to the academy, but if you don't test and find out that what they've done, you're just basically going off their background check and clumping them all together in this pre-employment. That's how they slip through the cracks. And I say, that's not good, and that's poor polygraph testing, poor agency hiring. Have you been accused of one of the following in your life, such as infidelity, custody matters, CPS investigations, or serious criminal matters that you're currently being investigated for? At Executive Protection Group Polygraph Service, we have been helping thousands of individuals for over 24 years, no matter who you are or what you have been accused of, with the highest accuracy, integrity, and overall compassion to everyone's needs. We are not your typical polygraph or lie detection service. At Executive Protection Group Polygraph Service, we are certified experts recognized in courts throughout the country, and we stand by our promise to give you full closure and all your needed answers. Call at 757-495-1301 and visit our website at www.executiveprotectiongrp.com to get started. What happens when you fail polygraph tests at an agency? There are times that an agency will allow you to have a retake. And then there are times that they may not, but you can ask. So here's what happens, ladies and gentlemen, and this is important to know. If you get told, and I'm going to give you a really, really good situation that occurred, but if you get told that you received an inconclusive result, or you failed, and they tell you, however, we're going to give you an opportunity to retake it, or you have an appeal process and you can retake it, please jump on that retake process. Because here's what's going to happen for that retake process. Number one, you're not going to have a retake examination with that same examiner, and you're going to take a second examination with a second examiner, different examiner. The questions will most likely be the same, and that examiner will not care whether you either had an inconclusive result last time or failed polygraph. They're going to care about what is present right then and there. So go in there positive and feel the same confidence that you had the last time. And let me explain, and I have said this on my TikToks if you haven't seen my TikToks, but I have said this, I have blogs on my website in reference to pre-employment, and so I'm going to say this about inconclusive results, ladies and gentlemen. Under no circumstances is inconclusive your fault. You want to know why? When an individual walks through the door of a polygraph examination office, that individual, that examinee, knows whether or not they're telling the truth or they're going to lie. You know when you're going to take a test whether or not you're going to tell the truth or whether or not you're going to lie. You already know that. As a professional polygraph examiner, what is our job? Our job is to render the results of no deception, or no significant reaction or reaction. That's what our job is. So, when an examiner comes back and says inconclusive, you still sat in that chair knowing whether you lied or whether you told the truth. That examiner was unable to determine, based on the reactions and based on the questions they formulated and whether or not you gave good reactions, on whether or not you lied or told the truth. So, it's not your fault. It's the examiner's fault. And so what I'm going to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is when you get an inconclusive result, do not look down, do not look sad, do not be dejected, because you know right then and there whether or not you told the truth or told a lie. That examiner couldn't define definitively whether you passed or failed. So that's when you're either able to either say, I want a retake, or request one, or they'll tell you you can have a retake. And here's a perfect example and a real true story. I often get a lot of calls, emails from individuals who have taken polygraph tests from federal agencies who get a lot of inconclusive results. And this one individual called me who was extremely, extremely upset because he had gotten an inconclusive result. He had called me and said that he applied to U.S. Customs and Border, and it was his ultimate dream job, that he had been interning with them, working with them. He even was told, you need to apply. We would love to have you. And he finally, after years of interning with them and working with them in a supportive role, he finally decided, I'm going to apply because they're telling me to do so, and this is where I want to work. He took the test. He had no criminal record. He had never used a drug in his entire life, just like me. And he felt that he was going to rock this test and get the dream job. The female examiner, and it had nothing to do with gender, but I'm just telling you what this case was. The female examiner, after his testing, at first told him that she couldn't give him the results at first on whether or not he passed, and she would have to give it to a quality control officer. However, he said that she was looking very, very puzzled during the actual testing and afterwards, and that really concerned him. He said that they had gotten up, they walked to the elevator where she escorted him, and when the doors were closing in on him in the elevator, that's when she said, I'm sorry, you failed. That's pretty crappy to me as soon as the door closes, because he can't say, what? So the door closes, he leaves thinking he failed. So as you can tell, you get in a car, what do you think? There goes my dream job. Oh my God, I can't believe I failed. I don't even know what question I failed on, if I even did fail. He then gets a letter in the mail saying that he didn't fail, but it was inconclusive results. He called me, like I said, and asked what he could do. And I said he needs to check to see if they have an appeal process or a process where he can ask for a retake of his examination. And lo and behold, he sent a letter, he did call, and they do have a retake process. They gave him a retake. He passed with flying colors. I was notified later on down the road that he was hired. He got his dream job, and it was found out later, he found out later, that examiner was very much inexperienced and taken out of the unit. So what I'm going to say is this, ladies and gentlemen, it's very important in reference to polygraph pre-employment testing. Here's what happens. Pre-employment polygraph testing, as important as I think it is, because it's your dream job that you're applying for, and it can also be so important in reference to national security, classified materials. It's very important. However, this is what happens to a lot of agencies and departments. People that graduate from polygraph schools and then get some experience, they sometimes are immediately taken and placed in these positions to test for pre-employment, because this is where they hone in on their skills. So it's like a factory. You'll do 3 to 5 pre-employment polygraph tests a day. It's like next, 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 next. And it's just like a, same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again. It gets very monotonous, and it can be very boring, okay? Unless you really, and when I say really, really love your job, you really want to help people, you really want to see people, be successful. But if you don't, and you go, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this I'm so bored, this sucks. And that's what this job's about. when it comes to pre-employment. And what happens is there are some examiners that don't put their all effort into it. There's some examiners that are not experienced. And this is where a lot of people then tend to make mistakes. And let's hypothetically say that you go there, you get tested, you know you did well, but an inexperienced examiner messes you up. What happens, ladies and gentlemen? That agency and that examiner, they're not going to shed a tear because you failed or shed a tear because you didn't get the job. All you are is a number. Next, but it's important to you. And so what I'm going to say, ladies and gentlemen, and this is why I take my career very serious for everyone I test. If you have that opportunity, ask for a retest. Ask, because it means a lot to you. Okay? May not mean anything to that agency, and it may not mean anything to that examiner that tested you, but it means a lot to you. Now, there are people that fail tests, and they fail them for a lot of reasons. They're pathetic liars, they hold back information, they falsify their application, and they take this job as a big joke, and they just think, well, I think today I'm going to apply to the FBI, it's just something I want to do, and they pass all these other prerequisite phases, and then when it comes to the polygraph test, they fail. And then they want to blame the polygraph examiner, or they want to blame the agency, but in reality, it's them. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's not always the examiner, it's not always the process, it is also a lot of times the examinee. And I see that in my profession a lot. Okay? A lot. And so, all I'm saying is there are times that examinees do fail when they shouldn't, and there are times that people fail because they deserve to fail. But if you have an opportunity to ask for a retest, please do. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, I want to, thank all my listeners, all my followers who listen to Inside the Polygraph with David Goldberg, because it means so much to me. I want you to continue to follow, to share, and to listen. And I hope that my information that I provide is really educational to you and that you're getting a lot out of it. If you are someone who has taken a pre-employment polygraph test or any type of polygraph examination and you feel something was wrong, you know how you can reach out to me. If you want more information on any kind of polygraph testing to include pre-employment, reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to assist you. I wish you the very best. I wish you success in your dream jobs. And for those that have applied, keep positive, do what I've given you the advice for, and I know you're going to do absolutely awesome. Have a great day, and I wish everyone the very best. Thanks so much for listening. If you truly liked what you heard today, please be sure to rate the show, share with others, and subscribe for more episodes.